Congressman Williams from Texas's 25th congressional district. I get that right? Taking the time to join us here at CPAC, sir. Really a pleasure to have you.
It's good to see you. Good to see you.
All right, let's begin with, when I walk around CPAC here, got a lot of young conservatives, a lot of first-time voters. They're establishing what direction in politics they want to follow. What is your message to young conservatives or young Americans to go the path of the GOP as opposed to the Democratic Party?
Well, my message to young voters is be sure and vote to begin with, but also you got to get in the system or you're going to get out-hustled from a conservative standpoint. They need to understand that less government is the best government, and they see a president right now that's cutting through bureaucracy like we haven't seen in many, many years. And they need to get engaged. They need to run for office. They need to ask questions. They need to come to CPAC and see and see what this offers. But it's important because the future of any business, the future of any country is those young voters. And so we would empower them to continue to ask questions and do things, and like I say, run for office, get engaged, and save their country, frankly, from liberal left-wing ideas that we see are scary right now. We're arguing over socialism, over capitalism. Are you kidding me? Who thought we'd ever do that?
Sure. Now, I certainly know that Donald Trump is the standard bearer of the party, but I walk around CPAC, and I do hear from a lot of conservative voters, and they would say, well, hey, I support conservative ideals. Maybe I don't support everything that Donald Trump is necessarily about. Is there room for kind of anti-Trump conservatives at the table, you think?
Well, I don't know if it's anti-Trump. I mean, he's done some great things. I don't agree with him 100%. You don't have to agree with him 100%. What Ronald Reagan said, 80% would be just fine. So it's okay. It means you're open-minded. You'll ask questions. You'll find out. Nobody wants to go lockstep with anybody. That's not what this country is built on. It was built on debate and talk and conversation. But the fact of the matter is, if you're a conservative, you agree with Donald Trump 80%, 70%, 90%. The other side is no option because we agree with them on nothing right now when they're talking about socialism, big government, controlling the people, high taxes. That is not an option.
While I have you, I want to ask you about a few huge hearings you had in financial services over the course of last week. Let's start with the major credit bureaus, Equifax, TransUnion, Experian. You know, after a couple of years after this devastating data breach, how safe is it? And, you know, some of your colleagues had floated the opportunity to say there's only just a few credit bureaus. Perhaps there should be more. Your thoughts on how things happen on Capitol Hill?
Well, the credit breach was bad, and they've continued to address that. I mean, they told us that. But the fact of the matter is the liberals would like to go to a government credit bureau. We don't need that. We need more competition. I'm in the business, the car business. I use credit reports and credit bureaus all the time to be able to do business. The Democrats want to wipe bad credit off people's credit reports and so forth. That would drive the cost of goods up. That would hurt businesses. So it was an interesting hearing, but certainly again one that was driven by big government or less government, competition or no competition.
I want to ask you about Fed Chair Jay Powell, who you also had the opportunity to talk to me about your specific line of questioning with the Fed chief, and specifically which now seems to be a little bit of a new approach when it comes to maybe let's take a breather, let's be a little more patient when it comes to raising interest rates. Your thoughts?
Well, I talked to him, but I was concerned about raising interest rates. I'm come from an era where I was in business when we paid 20%. I know what high interest can do. Sure. And, 6% was a good rate in my lifetime. But now we've got rates as low as 2 and 3, and people think 3 is too high. But I'm concerned about the Fed raising rates even a little bit because the economy's good. And when you have people that finance products like cars and other things, just a small tweak in the interest rate could change somebody's payment $50, $100, and they can't buy the product. Then there's layoffs and the economy slows down. So I just I wanted to make sure that certainly he understands, but remind him that rates, when you raise rates, it's an increase of goods sold, and it could slow the economy down if they get too aggressive with it. He was very responsive to my question.
Does it bother you when the president weighs in on monetary policy? Because you know just as well as I do, Congressman, historically speaking, presidents in that office usually don't do that for very obvious reasons.
No, he's not the normal president. He's a business guy, and I think he thinks it's okay. I mean, I don't know that I have a problem with it. Jay Powell's a good man. He's independent. He's going to do the right thing. And so I don't fault the president for that. But you are right. We haven't had that before. But you got a business guy trying to do business.
Sure. Finally, the number $22 trillion. Let me ask you concerns over debt and deficit, not just as a Republican, but as a sitting lawmaker. You have a lot of Americans out there who are concerned with the newly revised numbers. What is your message to those Americans?
We need more concern than are not. I'm very concerned. I've always voted against the debt ceiling. $22 trillion debt's unbelievable. And it gets back to interest. If interest goes to 6 or 7%, we could add 70% of our GDP in interest. Then you don't have a military. Then you don't have roads and bridges. You don't have anything. We've got to cut the debt, and we've lied to the American public too too many years about balancing the books in 10 years. Who the heck balance their books in 10 years? We need to balance now like families do and like states do, and we need to cut expenses, and we need to drive things back down to the state. But we cannot continue to go on this path. I, for one, am totally against it, and both parties are wrong. I mean, it's not one over the other. Both parties have kicked the can down the road, and I, along with a few others, are very concerned about the debt. I think it's the biggest problem we got in America, and even the military will tell you that, because the higher the debt, the less the military weapons and the men we can have.